policy in the Obama administration?
This is a failure in policy, isn't it?
Well, it is. As we look back, the people who were fighting Assad were, they were business people, they were students, they were professionals. If we had been able to move in to help organize and support those people on the ground, maybe we could have made a difference. Well, we got to deal with where we are right now. It's obviously now a different set of circumstances, and what the Pentagon has been doing hasn't worked.
And she said, Yogi, that she kind of had a hard time with the question of how she differs from President Obama. But in this way, she's trying to separate, saying she was for arming and training and getting supplies to rebels in Syria early on.
That's right. I think she'll be faced with the difficulty of defending Obama policies up and down the board. But on this one, she can say, and say it accurately, she did not want to go where the president went. She, General Petraeus, when he was running the CIA, Leon Panneta running the Pentagon, all of them said, arm the Syrian rebels. And the president overruled his entire war cabinet. So on this particular issue, she could say, I was here, the president overruled me, and she's telling the truth.
A failure in policy. To hear the former Secretary of State say that.
I can't think of a bigger split between her and President Obama in foreign policy. This is a huge amount of daylight. And what she's saying is, I mean, she's being modest about it, but, if only they'd listened to me. In other words, things might have been different if we'd moved early. There were many Republicans who wanted to do that too. Lindsey Graham and John McCain were for this. But what she's saying is things would have been different if my policy recommendations had been followed. Now, she's going to have to answer why she couldn't convince the president. What good were you if you couldn't get him to do this? But this is a big, big difference.
She is right. I mean, the president wakes up 3 years after her advice, announces it's now almost exactly a year ago that he's now going to lead a 62-member coalition against ISIS. Remember the speech he made, the launching of the airstrikes. Well, 62 nations have produced an army of 9. That's unique, I think, in the history of warfare. And it was so humiliating that was the moment that Putin chose after the announcement of the complete failure of our policy of arming very late, training very late, a minuscule number of non-jihadi fighters. That's when Putin could step in, because the world could see how the policy had failed. Clinton is right, her advice was right, and it was ignored, and now we can see the consequences.
We should point out that all this comes, the president chaired this summit on countering violent extremism as the Taliban in Afghanistan has taken over a city, another city. ISIS is expanding in Iraq and Syria, but the Taliban is back on the move.
That's right, and for a while they were taking over parts of the south, which was scary enough. Now they're taking Kunduz. I've been to Kunduz. This is a large, major city. So they're expanding in the south, the east, the north, the west. There's not much of the country in which they're not expanding. And you remember, for a while, the White House was saying, you will not see Afghan cities fall. This won't be Iraq. Now you're seeing Afghan cities fall, and it's taking on the feel or the scent a little bit of Iraq.
And what's so scary about the fall of this city, in the north, we've always known that the heart of the Taliban, their tribal support is the Pashtun, who are in the south. But the north had always been a fairly anti-Taliban area. In fact, when we invaded in 2001, our allies were the Northern Alliance. They were already on our side. So this is a really extraordinary development. And the irony of having Obama preside over a summit about violent extremism as the important city in Afghanistan is falling, and as his Syria policy falls apart, is a metaphor for the whole foreign policy. Obama loves meetings, he loves talks, he loves coalitions. In the meantime, all of our allies in the region are on the run.